Hi, my name's John Price, and this is a short video on the scoring in duplicate bridge. The tactics in duplicate bridge are very different to that of ordinary bridge, and this is because the scoring is different, and you won't be able to appreciate the different tactics until you've got an appreciation of that difference in scoring. Let's look at the result sheet of a hand of bridge that's been played. Okay, we have 5 tables of bridge, and there are the names of all the north-south pairs. They're playing against each other, and we have all the east-west pairs named in the next column, and they've all played the same hand. Yet notice that the contracts have not always been the same. This one's pretty well the same. 3 no trumps seems to be the popular contract, but one pairing decided to go for 4 spades. So when we're looking at the contract there, we see that Andy and Bill went for a 3 no trump contract. It was actually Bill, south, who played the contract. Cedric and David went for the same contract by the same person, the south player, but they actually got 1 extra, and that's where it's shown in that 3rd column. Graham and Harry, in the 4th row, they decided to go for a 4 spade contract, and it was North that was playing it, but it got doubled. You see the X there? 4 spades X. That means they were doubled, and I'm afraid they went down by 2. Okay, so there are the various contracts. The next column tells you the lead. Normally that doesn't tell you a great deal, but the computer will fit that in, and this is a replica of a computer set of results. If you used to play face-to-face bridge, then that will be done by hand, but it's only the scoring at the very end that will be done by a referee. Now next to the lead is 2 columns which gives you the score, and it's the left-hand column of those 2 what gives you the score for north-south. So Andy and Bill were playing in 3 no trumps, and they made it, and so they got 600 points. That's actually the score, the bridge score for a vulnerable pairing. 600 points. When you first learned to play bridge, I'm sure the scoring was taught to you, and you've probably forgotten it by now. But you do know that when you get a game, you score lots of points. And when that's a vulnerable game, you score even more points, and they've scored 600 points. Cedric and David were in the same contract, 3 no trumps, but they got 1 extra trick. And because that was in no trumps, that's worth 30 points extra. So they scored a little bit better than Andy and Bill at 630 points. Not a lot better, but still a little bit better. And you've got 2 other pairings that scored exactly the same. It's Graham and Harry, who were in a different contract of 4 spades, who were doubled, and I'm afraid they went 2 down. And because they were vulnerable, that was 500 points. Not to them. Notice that the 500 points is on the next column. It's the east-west pair that score 500 points. But what I want you to imagine is that that is a score for north-south, for Graham and Harry, of minus 500 points. Now that's a total disaster. Look at Graham and Harry's score. They've scored minus 500. And above them, Edgar and Fred have scored 600 points. That's a difference of 1,100 points. If you were playing bridge £1 a point, and some high-rolling players do play like that, then Edgar and Fred would have won 600 points, £600 on that particular hand. Whereas Graham and Harry would have had to give to Gina and Hannah, the East-West, they'd have to give £500. They're £500 in debt on that particular hand. That's a difference of £1,100. Sure, Cedric and David did quite well, but they only get an extra £30. Big deal. But now, in duplicate bridge, those bridge scores are only a guide to how you actually score in duplicate bridge. Let's look at Andy and Bill. They scored 600 bridge points. How do we work out the match points? Well, you look at all the other players, the other scores, and Andy and Bill will get 2 points for any score that they beat, 1 point if they get the same, and no points if they lose. Okay, they scored 600. Below them, Cedric and David scored 630. They did better. So I'm afraid Andy and Bill don't get any points from them. Edgar and Fred, the same. That's 1 point. Andy and Bill did much, much better than Graham and Harry, but it doesn't matter how much. They just did better. So they get 2 points from that. That's 1 plus 2. They're up to 3 points so far. And Ian and John, the same. That's another 1 point. That's 1 plus 2 plus 1. I reckon they get 4 match points. Notice that Edgar and Fred and Ian and John got exactly the same score with exactly the same contract. So it wouldn't be surprising if, following that same technique, they also get 4 match points. That's 2 points for the team that they did better than, and 1 point from the other 2 pairs that they did the same as. How about Cedric and David? Now, Cedric and David did better than every single other pair. There are 4 other pairs, and so that should be 4 twos. That should give them 8 points. In fact, 8 points is the very best that you could do. That's the maximum, because there are always 4 other pairings, and if you beat them all, that's 4 lots of 2, which is 8 points. So that's the very best score. Graham and Harry, of course, didn't do better than anybody or the same. Not surprisingly, they get 0 points. So those are the match points for the North-South pairing. What about the East-West pairing? They should be getting match points as well. Well, this is going to be a bit tricky, but let's have a look at Carmen and Daphne. Now, Carmen and Daphne, what score did they get? They had to pay Cedric and David 630 points. Imagine their score as being the absolute opposite. It's a minus score. So Carmen and Daphne got minus 630, which was worse than all the other East-West pairs. Angela and Betty, they lost 600, but that's not as bad as losing 630. So I'm afraid Carmen and Daphne did worse than everybody else, and they're going to get 0 points. Now I'll give you a hint here. Watch out for this. When you're looking at the match point scores for East-West, it'll be that each table are sharing 8 points because Cedric and David won all of them. That's why Carmen and David get 0. What about Angela and Betty? Yes, they did better than 1 pair. And which pair did they do better than? Yes, Carmen and Daphne. And they did the same as Enid and Francis and Isla and Joanne. So that's another 2 points. But they did worse, yes, worse than Gina and Hannah, because Gina and Hannah won 500 points and Angela and Betty lost 600. So I reckon that's 4 points for all of those. Notice the match points are shared in each table. The maximum is 8 and you share them over. So those are the match points there. Sometimes you don't see it as match points, or you also see it as a percentage. And so each score for North-South is shown as a percentage of the maximum. The maximum's 8. So Andy and Bill scored 4. That's 50%. Cedric and David, all of them, 100%. Graham and Harry, no percent. So what do we learn from this? Well, Cedric and David just sneaked an extra 1 trick. In terms of the bridge score, that was just a mere 30 points. But look what's happened in match points. They score 8, whereas above them, Andy and Bill, who also scored 600, they got their contract, but they only get 4 match points. Cedric and David get twice as many. That's an incredible difference just for that 1 extra trick. So these extra tricks are really important. Actually, I'm just looking to see the lead, and strangely for Cedric and David, they got a lead of Queen of Diamonds, and all the others only got a lead of a 2 of Diamonds. It might not be that Cedric and David played brilliantly. It may well be that Carmen and Daphne made the wrong opening lead. Oh, the opening lead is so important. They've lost an extra trick than everybody else, and it meant that they get 0 points. And Cedric and David have benefited by getting all of the match points. But for whatever reason, Cedric and David, because of just that 1 extra trick, score maximum match points. So there's a moral straight away. You have to go for the extra tricks. Don't just be happy to have got your contract. If you spot a way of getting the extra trick, that'll be hugely beneficial. That's positive. What about Graham and Harry? Oh my gosh, it was a disaster. They've done 1,100 points worse in bridge scoring than everybody else. If you were playing ordinary bridge and on your first hand that happened, then you could spend the rest of the evening playing really brilliantly and doing a little bit better than everybody else, but you'd never catch up on that disastrous first score. So you might as well give in right from the very beginning. You had a disastrous first hand, there's no point in carrying on. But in duplicate bridge, that's not true. Okay, it was a disaster in terms of bridge score, but in terms of match points, yes, this time they've only got, well, they've got no match points. But there are 19 hands more, maybe 23 hands more, and it's easy to catch up. So although they've done something disastrous there, you've got every reason to carry on and play really well in all the other hands, and you can still catch up. Well, I know it's not easy, but I hope that's been useful. Thanks for listening.